It started with a knock, sharp, deliberate, and far too loud for midnight. At first, I thought I was dreaming. No one comes to your door at that hour unless it's an emergency. But then came another knock, louder, more demanding, echoing through my hallway like a warning. My stomach sank, my heart pounded, and when I finally peeked through the peephole, I froze. Standing on my porch was a group of people in neat suits, clipboards tucked under their arms, and stern expressions carved into their faces. The HOA at midnight. For a moment, I didn't move. Who in their right mind conducts HOA business at 12 in the morning? I debated pretending I wasn't home, but before I could decide, the man at the front leaned closer, his face illuminated by the dim porch light. "We know you're in there," he said in a low, steady voice that chilled me to the bone. "Open the door. We need to talk." Curiosity gnawed at me, but dread anchored me in place. Something about the way he spoke, like it wasn't a request but an order, made me realize this wasn't some routine neighborhood complaint about trash cans or lawn length. No, this was something else, something heavier, darker. Against my better judgment, I slowly turned the lock and opened the door just enough to see them clearly. There were 5 of them, all dressed too formally for the hour, all standing in rigid formation like they had rehearsed this moment. The man at the front introduced himself as Mr. Dalton, the HOA president. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and his voice carried a strange mix of authority and menace. "We're here," he said, "because there are rules you've broken, rules you don't even know exist." The words made no sense. I paid my dues, kept my lawn tidy, and followed every regulation, no matter how ridiculous. But Dalton's smirk told me this wasn't about rules on paper. This was something unspoken, something hidden beneath the glossy facade of neighborhood harmony. Before I could ask what he meant, another board member stepped forward, a woman clutching her clipboard like it was a weapon. She flipped through the papers and whispered something to Dalton, too quiet for me to hear. He nodded, then looked me dead in the eyes. "You need to come with us." That line hit me like a slap. HOA board members don't ask homeowners to come with them in the middle of the night. That's not how neighborhoods work. And yet, there they stood, waiting for me to comply as though this was routine. I laughed nervously, trying to break the tension. "Come with you where?" I asked. But the way their expressions didn't change made my throat dry. Dalton leaned closer, his shadow stretching across my doorway. "To the clubhouse. There are things you need to see, things you've ignored for too long." Every part of me screamed to slam the door, lock it, and call the police. But something in his eyes told me that would only make things worse. Against reason, I slipped on my shoes, shut the door behind me, and followed them into the night. The walk to the clubhouse was unnerving. The streets were too quiet, the air too still. It was as if the entire neighborhood was holding its breath, watching silently from behind drawn curtains. I kept glancing at the houses, expecting to see someone peeking through blinds, but every window was dark, every porch light off. It was like the HOA had orchestrated this, like they wanted me alone in their grasp. When we finally reached the clubhouse, the first thing I noticed was the light. It wasn't the soft glow of lamps or chandeliers. No, it was a harsh, sterile white that poured through the windows like interrogation floodlights. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach and something metallic. My gut twisted. Dalton held the door open, his hand gesturing me inside with a politeness that felt like mockery. I stepped in cautiously, my eyes adjusting to the brightness. The usual decorations were gone. No comfy chairs, no bulletin boards cluttered with flyers. Instead, the room had been stripped bare except for a long table in the center and a stack of thick black binders piled on top. "Sit," Dalton ordered. I hesitated, but the others were already circling the room, closing the blinds, locking the doors. A cold shiver slid down my spine. I sat. Dalton slid one of the binders toward me, Its cover was blank, but when I opened it, my breath caught. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, of my house, my yard, my family. Some taken in broad daylight, others in the dead of night. They weren't just casual shots either. They were detailed, precise, almost surveillance level. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking. Dalton smiled faintly. "Your violations." I slammed the binder shut, my hands trembling. "Violations of what? I haven't broken any rules." "Oh," Dalton said softly, "you think you know the rules, the ones printed in your little handbook. But those are just for show, for the ordinary residents. There are deeper rules, older rules, and you've already broken them without even realizing." I wanted to laugh it off, but the weight of his words pressed against me like a storm cloud. He wasn't joking. Whatever he was talking about, he believed it wholeheartedly. And the worst part? The other board members nodded along, their faces grim, as if they too were guardians of some hidden code. Dalton leaned in close enough for me to see the veins in his eyes. "The midnight knock is not random," he whispered. "It's the last warning. The next step is enforcement." My heart hammered. Enforcement? What did that even mean? Before I could ask, the woman with the clipboard slid another binder in front of me. This one wasn't filled with photos. It was filled with names, pages and pages of names. Some I recognized, neighbors who had moved away suddenly, without explanation, families who packed up overnight and were gone by morning. Dalton tapped the list with his finger. "Do you know what they all had in common?" I shook my head, my throat too tight to speak. They ignored the midnight knock. The room seemed to tilt. I felt dizzy, trapped, like the walls were closing in. Was this real? Was I trapped in some cult masquerading as a neighborhood association? I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is insane! I'm leaving!" Dalton didn't stop me. In fact, he stepped aside, almost inviting me to go. But just as I reached for the door, he said, "Go ahead, but if you walk out now, you'll end up like the rest." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but something inside whispered that if I did, I'd never make it home. Slowly, I turned back. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Dalton's smile widened, but it wasn't kind. It was the smile of someone who knows they've trapped you perfectly. He gestured back to the table. "Sit and listen, because your choice tonight determines whether you remain a neighbor or become a name." And that's when he opened the third binder. What I saw inside didn't make sense at first. Pages filled with architectural blueprints of the neighborhood, strange symbols scribbled in the margins, and entire sections of the map blacked out as if they had been erased from existence. But as Dalton explained, piece by piece, my stomach dropped lower and lower. Because according to him, our neighborhood wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a boundary, a barrier. And the HOA, they weren't protecting us from each other. They were protecting us from something trying to get in.